The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the subcommittees at any time. Good morning and welcome to today's hearing entitled Big Data Challenges and Advanced Computing Solutions. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Today, we will explore the application of machine learning-based algorithms to big data science challenges. Born from the artificial intelligence AI movement that began in the 1950s, machine learning is a data analysis technique that gives computers the ability to learn directly from data without being explicitly programmed. Generally speaking, and don't worry, I'll save the detailed description for y'all, our expert witnesses, machine learning is used when computers are trained, would that more husbands are trained, right ladies, on large data sets to recognize patterns in that data and learn to make future decisions based on these observations. Today, specialized algorithms termed deep learning are leading the field of machine learning-based approaches. These algorithms are able to train computers to perform certain tasks at levels that can exceed human ability. Machine learning also has the potential to improve computational science methods for many big data problems. As the nation's largest federal sponsor of basic research in the physical sciences, with expertise in big data science, advanced algorithms, data analytics, and high-performance computing, the Department of Energy is uniquely equipped to fund robust fundamental research in machine learning. The department also manages the 17 DOE national labs and 27 world-leading scientific user facilities, which are instrumental to connecting basic science and advanced computing. Machine learning and other advanced computing processes have broad applications in the DOE mission space, from high-energy physics to fusion energy sciences to nuclear weapons development. Machine learning also has important applications in academia and industry. In industry, common examples of machine learning techniques are in automated driving, facial recognition, and automated speech recognition. At Rice University, near my home district, researchers seek to utilize machine learning approaches to address challenges in geological sciences. In addition, the University of Houston's Solutions Lab supports research that will use machine learning to predict the behavior of flooding events and aid in evacuation planning. This would be incredibly beneficial for my district and all areas that are prone to hurricanes and to flooding. In fact, in Texas, we're still recovering from Hurricane Harvey, the wettest storm in United States history. The future of scientific discovery includes the incorporation of advanced data analysis techniques like machine learning. With the next generation of supercomputers, including the exascale computing systems that DOE is expected to field by 2021, American researchers utilizing these technologies will be able to explore even bigger challenges. With the immense potential for machine learning technologies to answer fundamental scientific questions, provide the foundation for high-performance computing capabilities, and drive future technological development, it's clear that we should prioritize this research. I want to thank our accomplished panel of witnesses for their testimony today, and I look forward to hearing what role Congress should play in advancing this critical area of research. I now recognize the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Weber. Thank you, Chairwoman Comstock, and also thank you to the distinguished panel for being here this morning. As you know, there are a growing number of industries today that are relying on generating and interpreting large amounts of data to overcome new challenges. The energy sector in particular is making strides in leveraging these new technologies and techniques. Today, we're going to hear more about the advancements that we're going to see in the upcoming years. Sensor-equipped aircraft engines, locomotive, gas and wind turbines are now able to track production efficiency and the wear and tear on vital machinery. This enables significant reductions in fuel consumption as well as carbon emissions. The technologies are also significantly improving our ability to detect failures before they occur and prevent disasters. And by doing so, we'll save money, we'll save time and lives. And by using analytics, sensors, and operational data, we can manage and optimize systems ranging from energy storage components to power plants and to the electric grid. As digital technologies revolutionize the energy sector, we also must ensure the safe and responsible use of these processes. With our electric grid always under persistent threats from everything from cyber to other modes of subterfuge, the security of these connected systems is of the utmost importance. Nevertheless, I'm excited to learn more about the valuable benefits that these technologies may be able to provide for our economy and our environment alike. I'm looking forward to hearing what we can do in Congress to help guide and support the responsible development of these new data-driven approaches to the management of these ever more complex systems that our society is very dependent on. Thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Vesey. I now recognize the chairwoman of the Research and Technology Subcommittee, the gentlewoman from Virginia, Mrs. Comstock, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Weber. A couple of weeks ago, our two subcommittees joined together on a hearing to examine the state of artificial intelligence and the types of research being conducted to advance this technology. The committee learned about the nuances of the term artificial intelligence, such as the difference between narrow and general AI and implications for a world in which AI is ubiquitous. Today, we delve deeper into disciplines originating from the AI movement of the 1950s that include machine learning, deep learning, and neural networks. Until recently, machine learning and especially deep learning technologies were only theoretical because deep learning models require massive amounts of data and computing power. But advances in high-performance graphics, processing units, cloud computing, and data storage have made these techniques possible. Machine learning is pervasive in our day-to-day lives, from tagging photos on Facebook, to protecting emails with spam filters, to using a virtual assistant like Siri or Alexa for information. Machine learning-based algorithms have powerful applications that ultimately help make our lives more fun, safe, and informative. In the federal government, the Department of Energy stands out for its work in high-performance computing and approaches to big data science challenges. The Energy Department researchers are using machine learning approaches to study protein behavior, to understand the trajectories of patient health outcomes, and to predict biological drug responses. At Argonne National Laboratory, for example, researchers are using intensive machine learning-based algorithms to attempt to map the human brain. A program of particular interest to me involves a DOE and Department of Veterans Affairs venture known as the MVP Champion Program. This joint collaboration will leverage DOE's high-performance computing and machine learning capabilities to analyze health records of more than 20 million veterans maintained by the VA. The goal of this partnership is to arm the VA with data it can use to potentially improve healthcare offered to our veterans by developing new treatments and preventive strategies and best practices. The potential for AI to help humans in further scientific discoveries is obviously immense. I look forward to what our witnesses will testify to today about their work, and which may give us a glimpse into the revolutionary technologies of tomorrow that we're here to discuss. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Let me introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Dr. Bobby. I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, you're going to...
Mr. Chairman, thank you. In the interest of time, I just ask unanimous consent to put my opening statement in the record.
Without objection. Thank you. Appreciate that. Now I will introduce the witnesses. Our first witness is Dr. Bobby Kasthuri, the first neuroscience researcher at Argonne National Lab and an assistant professor in the Department of Neurobiology at the University of Chicago. You're busy. Dr. Kasthuri's current research focuses on innovation and new approaches to brain mapping, including the use of high-energy X-rays from synchrotron sources for mapping brains in their entirety. He holds a Bachelor of Science from Princeton University, an MD from Washington University School of Medicine, and a PhD from Oxford University, where he studied as a Rhodes Scholar. Welcome, Doctor. Our second witness today is Dr. Katherine Yelick, a professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences at the University of California, Berkeley and at California, Berkeley, and the Associate Laboratory Director for Computing Sciences at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Her research is in high-performance computing, programming languages, compilers, parallel algorithms, and automatic performance tuning. Dr. Yelick received her Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and PhD all in computer science at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Welcome, Dr. Yelick. Our next witness is Dr. Matthew Nielsen, Principal Scientist at GE Global Research Center. Dr. Nielsen's current research focus is on digital twin and computer modeling and simulation of physical assets using first principle physics and machine learning methods. He received a Bachelor of Science in Physics at Alma College in Alma, Michigan, and a PhD in Applied Physics from Rensselaer, okay. Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. Welcome, Dr. Nielsen. And our final witness today is Dr. Anthony Rollett, the U.S. Steele Professor of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science at Carnegie Mellon University, aka CMU. Dr. Rollett has been a professor of materials science and engineering at CMU for over 20 years and is the co-director of CMU's Next Manufacturing Center. Dr. Rollett's research focuses on microstructural evolution and microstructure property relationships in 3D. He received a Master of Arts in Metallurgy and Materials Science from Cambridge University and a PhD in Materials Engineering from Drexel University. Welcome, Dr. Rollett. I now recognize Dr. Kasthuri for 5 minutes to present his testimony. Doctor.
Thank you. Chairman Smith, Chairman Weber, Chairwoman Comstock, ranking members VC and Lipinski, and members of the subcommittees. Thank you for this opportunity to talk and appear before you. My name is Bobby Kasthuri. I'm a neuroscientist at Argonne National Labs and an assistant professor in the Department of Neurobiology at the University of Chicago. And the reason I'm here talking to you today is because I think we are at a pivotal moment in our decades-long quest to understand the brain. And the reason we are at this pivotal moment is that we're actually witnessing in real time is the collision of two different disciplines, two different worlds, the worlds of computer science and neuroscience. And if we can nurture and develop this union, it could fundamentally change many things about our society. First, it could fundamentally change how we think about understanding the brain. It could change and revolutionize how we treat mental illness. And perhaps even more significantly, it can change how we think and imagine and build our future computers and our future robots based on how brains solve problems. The major obstacle between us and realizing this vision is that for many neuroscientists, modern neuroscience is extremely expensive and extremely resource intensive. To give you an idea of this scale, I thought it might help to give you an example of the enormity of the problem that we're trying to do. The human brain, your brains, probably contain on order 100 billion brain cells or neurons. And the main thing that neurons do is connect with each other. And so in your brain, there's probably each neuron connects on average 10,000 times with 10,000 other neurons. That means in your brain, there are orders of magnitude more connections between neurons than stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And what's even more important for neuroscientists is that we believe that this map of you, this map of connections, contains all of the things that make us human. Our creativity, our ability to think critically, our fears, our dreams are all contained in that map. But unfortunately, that map, if we were to do it, wouldn't be 1 gigabyte of data, wouldn't be 100 gigabytes of data. It could be on order 1 billion gigabytes of data, perhaps the largest data set about anything ever collected in the history of humanity. The problem is that for many neuroscientists, even analyzing a fraction of this map is beyond their resources, the resources of their laboratory, the resources of the universities, and perhaps the resources of these of even large institutions. And if we don't address this gap, then what will happen is that only the richest neuroscientists will be able to answer their questions. And we would like every neuroscientist to have access to answer the most important questions about brains and ultimately promote this fusion of computer science and neuroscience. Luckily, there is a potential solution, and the potential solution is the Department of Energy and the National Lab System, which is part of the Department of Energy. As stewards of our scientific architecture, as stewards of some of the most advanced technological and computing capabilities available, the Department of Energy and the national labs can address this gap. And in fact, they do address this gap in many different sciences. If I was a young astrophysicist or a young material scientist, no one would expect me to get money and build my own space telescope. Instead, I would leverage the resources, the amazing resources of the National Lab System to answer my fundamental questions. And although many fields of science have learned how to leverage the expertise and the resources available in the National Lab System, neuroscientists have not. A national center for brain mapping situated within the DOE lab system could actually be a sophisticated clearinghouse to ensure that the correct physics and engineering and computer science tools are vetted and accessible for measuring brain structure and brain function. Since the national labs are also the stewards of our advanced computing infrastructure, they're ideally suited to incubate these revolutions in computer and neurosciences. Decades earlier, as a biologist, I just recently learned that the DOE and the national labs helped usher in humanity's perhaps greatest scientific achievement of the 20th century, the mapping of the human genome and the understanding of the genetic basis of life. We believe that the DOE and the National Lab System can make a similar contribution to understanding the human brain. Other countries like Japan, South Korea, and China, cognizant of the remarkable benefits to economic and national security that understanding brains and using them to make computer science better have already invested in national efforts in artificial intelligence and national efforts to understand the brain. The United States has not yet. And I think it's important at the end of my statement for everyone to remember that we are the ones who went to the moon. We are the ones who harnessed the power of nuclear energy, and we are the ones that led the genomic revolution. And I suspect it's now time for a moment now for the U.S. to lead again, to map and help reverse engineer the physical substrates of human thought, arguably the most challenging quest of the 21st century and perhaps the last great scientific frontier. Thank you for your time and attention today. I welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Yelick, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Smith, Chairman Weber, Chairwoman Comstock, Ranking Members Veazey and Lipinski, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for holding this hearing and for the committee's support for science. And thank you for inviting me to testify. My name is Kathy Yelick, and I'm the Associate Laboratory Director for Computing Sciences at Berkeley National Laboratory, a DOE Office of Science laboratory managed by the University of California. I'm also a professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences at the University of California, Berkeley. Berkeley Lab is home to 5 national scientific user facilities serving over 10,000 researchers covering all 50 states. The combination of experimental, computational, and networking facilities puts Berkeley Lab on the cutting edge of data-intensive science. In my testimony today, I plan to do 4 things. First, describe some of the large-scale data challenges in the DOE Office of Science. Second, examine the emerging role of machine learning. Third, discuss some of the incredible opportunities for machine learning in science, which leverage DOE's role as a leader in high-performance computing, applied mathematics, experimental facilities, and team-based science. And fourth, explore some of the challenges of machine learning and data-intensive science. Big data challenges are often characterized by the 4 V's. The volume, that is the total size of data, the velocity, the rate at which the data is being produced, variability, the diversity of different types of data, and veracity, the noise, the errors, and the other quality issues in the data. Scientific data has all of these. Genomic data, for example, has grown by over a factor of 1,000 in the last decade, but the most abundant form of life, microbes, are not well understood. Microbes can fix nitrogen, break down biomass for fuels, or fight algal blooms. DOE's Joint Genome Institute has over 12 trillion bases, that is DNA characters, A, C, T, and G, of microbial DNA, enough to fill the Library of Congress if you printed them in very boring books that only contain those 4 characters. But genome sequencers produce only fragments with errors, and the DNA of the entire microbial community is all mixed together. So it's like taking the Library of Congress, shredding all of the books, throwing in some junk, and then asking somebody to reconstruct the books from them. We use supercomputers to do this, to assemble the pieces, to find the related genes, and to compare the communities. DOE's innovations are actually helping to create some of these data challenges. The detectors used in electron microscopes, which were developed at Berkeley Lab and since commercialized, have produced data that's almost 10,000 times faster than just 10 years ago. Machine learning is an amazingly powerful strategy for analyzing data. Perhaps the most well-known example is identifying images such as cats on the internet. A machine learning algorithm is fed a large set of, say, 10 million images, of which some of them are labeled as having cats. And the algorithm uses those images to build a model, that's sort of a probability of which images are likely to contain cats. Now, in science, we're not looking for cats, but images arise in many different scientific disciplines, from electron microscopes to light sources to telescopes. Nobel laureate Saul Perlmutter used images of supernovae, exploding stars, to measure the accelerating expansion of the universe. The number of images produced each night from telescopes has grown from tens per night to tens of millions per night over the last 30 years. They used to be analyzed manually by scientific experts, and now much of that work has been replaced by machine learning algorithms. The upcoming LSST telescope will produce 15 terabytes of data every night. If you watch that one night's worth of data as a movie, it would take over 10 years. So you can imagine why scientists are interested in using machine learning to help them analyze that data. Machine learning can be used to find patterns, cluster similar items, or approximate complicated experiments. A recent survey at Berkeley Lab found over 100 projects that are using some form of machine learning. They use it to track subatomic particles, analyze light source data, search for new materials for better batteries, improve crop yield, and identify abnormal behavior on the power grid. Machine learning, it does not replace the need for high-performance computing simulations, but adds a complementary tool for science. Recent earthquake simulations of the Bay Area show that just a 3-mile difference in location of an identical building makes a significant difference in the safety of that building. It really is all about location, location, location. And the team that did this work is looking at taking data from embedded sensors and eventually even from smart meters to give even more detailed location-specific results. There is tremendous enthusiasm for machine learning and science, but some cautionary notes as well. Machine learning results are often lacking in explanations, interpretations, or error bars, a frustration for scientists. And scientific data is complicated and often incomplete. The algorithms are known to be biased by the data that they see. A self-driving car that may not recognize voices from Texas if it's only seen data from the Midwest.
Hey.
Or we may miss a cosmic event in the southern hemisphere if they've only seen data from telescopes in the northern hemisphere. Foundational research in machine learning is needed, along with a network to move the data to the computers and share it with the community and make it as easy to search for scientific data as it is to find a used car online. Machine learning has revolutionized the field of artificial intelligence, and it requires 3 things: large amounts of data, fast computers, and good algorithms. DOE has all of these. Scientific instruments are the eyes, ears, and hands of science, but unlike artificial intelligence, the goal is not to replicate human behavior, but to augment it with superhuman measurement, control, and analysis capabilities, empowering scientists to handle data at unprecedented scales, provide new scientific insights, and solve important societal challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Nielsen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Smith, Chairman Weber, and Chairwoman Comstock, ranking members VC and Lipinski, and members of the subcommittee. It is an honor to share General Electric's perspective on innovative machine learning-based approaches to big data science challenges that promote a more resilient, efficient, and sustainable energy infrastructure. I am Matt Nielsen, a principal scientist at GE's Global Research Center in upstate New York. The installed asset base of GE's power and renewables businesses generates roughly 1/3 of the planet's power, and 40% of the world's electricity is managed by our software. GE Energy's assets include everything from gas and steam power, nuclear, grid solutions, energy storage, onshore and offshore wind, and hydropower. The nexus of physical and digital technologies is revolutionizing what industrial assets can do and how they are managed. One of the single most important questions industrial companies such as GE are grappling with is how to most effectively integrate the use of AI and machine learning into their business operations to differentiate the products and services they offer. GE has been on this journey for more than a decade. A key learning for us, and I can attest to this as being a physicist, has been the importance of tying our digital solutions to the physics of our machines and to the extensive knowledge on how they are controlled. I'll now highlight a few industrial applications of AI and machine learning where GE is collaborating with our customers and federal agencies like the U.S. Department of Energy. At GE, digital twins are a chief application of AI and machine learning. Digital twins are living digital models of industrial assets, processes, and systems that use machine learning to see, think, and act on big data. Digital twins learn from a variety of sources, including sensor data from the physical machines or processes, fleet data, and industrial domain expertise. These computer models continuously update as new data becomes available, enabling a near real-time view of the condition of the asset. To date, GE scientists and engineers have created nearly 1.2 million digital twins. Many of the digital twins are created using machine learning techniques such as neural networks. The application of digital twins in the energy sector is enabling GE to revolutionize the operation and maintenance of our assets and to drive new innovative approaches in critical areas such as services and cybersecurity. Now, on to digital ghosts. Cyber threats to industrial control systems that manage our critical infrastructure, such as power plants, are growing at an alarming rate. GE is working with the Department of Energy on a cost-shared program to build the world's first industrial immune system for electric power plants. It can not only detect and localize cyber threats, but also automatically act to neutralize them, allowing the system to continue to operate safely. This effort engages a cross-disciplinary team of engineers from the global research and our power business. They are pairing the digital twins that I mentioned of the power plant's machines, industrial controls knowledge, and machine learning. The key, again, for this industrial immune system is the combination of advanced machine learning with a deep understanding of the machine's thermodynamics and physics. We have demonstrated to date the ability to rapidly and accurately detect and even localize simulated cyber threats with nearly 99% accuracy using our digital ghost techniques. We are also making significant progress now in automatically neutralizing these threats. It is a great example of how public-private research partnerships can advance technically risky but universally needed technologies. Along with improving cyber resiliency, AI and machine learning technologies are enabling us to improve GE's energy services portfolio, helping our customers optimize and reduce unplanned downtime for their assets. Through GE's Asset Performance Management platform, we help our customers avoid disruptions by providing deep, real-time data insights on the condition and operation of their assets. Using AI, machine learning, and digital twins, we can better predict when critical assets require repair or have a physical fault. This allows our customers to move from a schedule-based maintenance system to a condition-based maintenance system. The examples I have shared in GE's extensive developments with AI and machine learning have given us a first-hand experience into what it takes to successfully apply these technologies into our nation's energy infrastructure. My full recommendations are in my written testimony. I'll only summarize them here. Number one, continue to fund opportunities for public-private partnerships to expand the application and benefits of AI and machine learning across the energy sector. Two, encourage the collaboration between AI, machine learning, and subject matter experts, engineers, and scientists. And number three, continue to invest in the nation's high-performance computing assets and expand opportunities for private industry to work with the national labs. I appreciate the opportunity to offer our perspective on how the development of AI and machine learning technologies can meet the shared goals of creating a more efficient and resilient energy infrastructure. One final thought is to reinforce a theme that I've emphasized throughout my testimony, and that is the importance of having teams of physical and digital experts involved in driving the future of AI and machine learning solutions. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Nielsen. Dr. Rollett, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
So my thanks to Chairman Weber, Chairman Smith, Chairwoman Comstock, Ranking Members Veazey and Lipinski, and all members for your interest. Speaking as a metallurgist, it's my pleasure and privilege to testify before you because I've found data, big data, and machine learning, which depend on advanced computing, to be a never-ending source of insight for my research, be it on additive manufacturing or in developing new methods of research on structural materials. My bottom line is that there are pervasive opportunities, as you've heard, to benefit from big data and machine learning. Nevertheless, there are many challenges to be addressed in terms of algorithm development, learning how to apply the methods to new areas, transforming data into information, upgrading curricula, and developing regulatory frameworks. New and exciting manufacturing technologies such as 3D printing are coming on stream that generate big data, but they need further development, especially for qualification. In other words, the science that underpins the processes and materials needed to satisfy requirements. So consider that printing a part with a powder bed machine, standard machine, requires a 1,000-fold repetition of spreading a hair's breadth layer of powder, writing that desired shape in each layer, shifting the part by that same hair's breadth, and repeating. So if you think about taking a part and divide the dimension of that part by a hair's breadth, multiply by yards of laser melting track, you can easily estimate that each part contains miles and miles of tracks, hence the big data. The recent successes with machine learning have used data that is already information rich, as you've heard, cats, dogs, and so on. And so to advance manufacturing and basic science, however, we have to find better ways to transform that data stream into a big information stream. Another very important context is that education in all STEM subjects needs to include the use of advanced computing for data analysis and machine learning. And I know that this committee has focused on expanding computer science education, so thank you for that. So for printing, please understand that the machines are highly functional and produce excellent results. Nevertheless, if we're going to be able to qualify these machines to produce reliable parts that can be used in, for example, commercial aviation, we got some work to do. If I might ask for the video, Daniel, if you can manage to get that to play. So I'd like to illustrate the challenges in my own research. I often use the light sources, in other words, X-rays from synchrotrons, most of which are curated by the Department of Energy. I use several modes of experimentation, such as computed tomography, diffraction microscopy, and dynamic X-ray radiography. So this DXR technique produces movies of the melting of the powder layers, exactly as occurs in 3D printing with a laser. And again, at the micrometer scale, you can see about 1 millimeter there. And you can also see that the dynamic nature of the process means that one must capture this at the same rate as, say, the more familiar case of a bullet going through armor. Over the last couple of years, we've gotten many deep insights as to how the process works. But again, for the big data aspect, each of these experiments lasts about 1 millisecond. That's about 500 times faster than you can blink. And it provides gigabytes of images, hence the big data. Storing and transmitting such large amounts of data, which are arriving at ever-increasing rates, is a challenge for this vital public resource. I should say that the light sources themselves are well aware of this challenge. Giving more serious attention to such challenges requires funding agencies to adopt the right vision in terms of recognizing the need for a fusion of data science with the specific applications. I also want to say that cybersecurity is widely understood to be an important problem, with almost weekly stories about data leaks and hacking efforts. What's not quite so well understood is exactly how we're going to interface manufacturing with cybersecurity. So, in summary, I suggest that there are 3 areas of opportunity. First, federal agencies should continue to support the application of machine learning to advanced manufacturing, particularly for the qualification of new technologies and materials. I commend all of my funders for supporting these advances, and particularly want to call out the FAA for providing strong motivation here. In the future, research initiatives should also seize the potential for moonshot efforts on objectives such as integrating artificial intelligence capabilities directly into advanced manufacturing machines and advancing synergy between technologies such as additive manufacturing and robotics. Second, we need to continue to energize and revitalize STEM education at all levels to reflect the importance of data, learning, and computing with a focus on manufacturing. I myself have had to learn these things as I've gone along. Third, based on the evidence that machine learning is being successfully applied in many areas, we should encourage agencies to seek programs in areas where it is not so obvious how to apply the new tools and to instantiate programs in communities where data, machine learning, and advanced computing are not yet prevalent. Having traveled abroad extensively, I can assure you that the competition is serious. Countries that we used to dismiss out of hand are publishing more than we are and securing more patents than we do. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to testify and share my views on this vital subject. I know that we will all be glad to answer your questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. This question is for all the witnesses. You've all used similar terminology in your testimonies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. So that we can all start off on the same page, I'll start with Dr. Kasthuri, but could you explain what these terms mean and how they relate to each other? In the interest of time, I'm going to divvy these up. Dr. Kasthuri, you take artificial intelligence. Dr. Yelick, you take machine learning. Dr. Nielsen, you take deep learning. All right? Doctor, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman Weber. That's an excellent question. In the interest of time, I'm not going to speak about artificial intelligence. There are clearly experts sitting next to me. I'm interested in the idea of finding natural intelligence wherever we can. And I would say that the confusion that exists in these terminologies also exists when we think about intelligence beyond the artificial space. And I'm happy, perhaps after I let the other scientists speak, to talk about how we define natural intelligence different ways, which might help elucidate the ways we define artificial intelligence.
All right, fair enough. Dr. Yelick, do you feel that monkey on your back?
Yes. Thank you very much for the question. So let me try to cover a little bit of all three. So artificial intelligence is a very longstanding subfield of computer science, looking at how to make computers behave with human-like behavior. And one of the most powerful techniques for some of the sub-problems in artificial intelligence, such as computer vision and speech processing, are machine learning algorithms. These algorithms have been around for a long time, but the availability of large amounts of labeled data and large amounts of computing have really made them take off in terms of being able to solve those artificial intelligence problems in certain ways. The specific type of machine learning is a broad class of algorithms that come from statistics and computer science, but the specific class is called deep learning algorithms. And I won't go into the details. I will defer that if somebody else wants to try to explain deep learning algorithms, but they are used for these particular breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. I would say that the popular press often equates the word artificial intelligence with the term deep learning because the algorithms have been so powerful, and so that can create some confusion.
All right, thank you, Dr. Nielsen.
Yes, I'm not an expert in deep learning, but we are practitioners of deep learning at GE. And really, it's taken off in, I would say, the last several years as we've seen a rise in big data. So we have nearly 300,000 assets spread globally, and each one generating gigabytes of data. And now processing that gigabytes of data and trying to make sense of it, we're using deep learning techniques. It's a subfield, as you mentioned, of machine learning algorithms, but allows us to extract more information, more relationships, if you will. So for example, we use deep learning to help us build a computer model of a combined cycle power plant. Very complex system, very complex thermodynamics. And it's only because we have been able to collect now years and years of historical data and then process that through deep learning algorithms. So for us, deep learning is a breakthrough enabled by advances in computing technology, advances in big data science, and it's allowing us to build what we think is more complex models of not only our assets, but the processes that they perform.
Dr. Rollett, before you answer, you issued a warning, quite frankly, in your statement that there's been more patents filed by some of the foreign countries than we are. Do you attribute that to what we're talking about here? Go ahead.
In very simple terms, I think what I'm calling attention to is investment level in the science that underpins all kinds of things. So whether it be the biology of the brain, the functioning of the brain, or how you make machines work, how you construct machines, control algorithms, so on and so forth. That's really what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
And I'm trying to give you some support, some ammunition that what you're doing as a committee, set of subcommittees is really worthwhile.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me move on to the second question. Several of you mentioned your reliance on DOE facilities, which is, again, what you're talking about, particularly light sources and supercomputing, which is we are focused on and been to a couple of those for the types of big data research that y'all all perform. And my question is, how necessary is it for the United States to keep up to date? You've already addressed that with the patents statement and warning that you issued. But what I want to know is, have any of y'all, would you opine on who the nearest competitor is? And have you interfaced with any scientists or individuals from those companies? And if so, in what field and in what way? Doctor?
I would say that internationally, the nearest two competitors to us are Germany and China. And in general, in the scientific world, there is a tension between collaboration and competition, independent of whether the scientist lives in America or doesn't live in America. I think the good news is that for us, at least in neuroscience, we realize that the scale of the problem is so enormous and has so much opportunity. There's plenty of food for everyone to eat. So right now, we live at the world of cooperation between individual scientists where we share data, share problems, and share solutions back and forth. I'm less, of course, familiar with what happens at levels much higher than that.
Thank you, Dr. Yelick.
Yes, in the area of high-performance computing, I would say the closest competitor at this point is China. And in science, we also like to look at derivatives. So what we really see is that China is growing very, very rapidly in terms of their leadership. At this point, we do have the fastest computer in the top 500 list in the U.S. But of course, until recently, that was the top two, number 1 and 3 machines were from China. But perhaps more importantly than that, there are actually more machines manufactured in China on that list than there are machines that are manufactured in the U.S. So there is a huge and growing interest, and certainly a lot of research, a lot of funding in China for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of that applied to science and other problems.
Have you met with anybody from over in China involved in that field?
Yes, last summer I actually did a tour of all of the major supercomputing facilities in China. So I got to see what were the number 1 and number 3 machines at that time, and was very impressed by the scientists. I think one of the things that you see, and a lot of, by the way, very junior scientists, the students that they are training in these areas, they use these machines to also draw talent back to China from the U.S. or to keep talent that was trained in China in the U.S. And they have very impressive people in terms of the computer scientists and computational scientists.
Dr. Nielsen, very quickly, because I'm out of time.
Yes, I would just like to echo that, like Dr. Rollett, we follow publications and patents, and we're seeing a growing number from China. So I'd like to echo that just from that statement. We're seeing a growing interest in the use of high-performance computing to look at things like cybersecurity from China. So obviously, that's the number 1 location we're looking at.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rollett. I'm going to have to move on now, so I'm now going to recognize the gentlelady from Oregon for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What an impressive panel and what a great conversation and an important one. I represent Northwest Oregon, where Intel is developing the foundation for the first exascale machines. We know the potential of high-performance computing and all energy exploration, predicting climate and weather, predictive and preventive medicine, emergency response, so just a tremendous amount of potential. And we certainly recognize on this committee that an investment in exascale systems and high-performance computing is important for our economic competitiveness, national security, and many reasons. And we know, I also serve on the Education Committee, and I know that our country has some of the best scientists and programmers and engineers, but what really sets our country apart is entrepreneurs and innovation. And those characteristics require creative and critical thinking, which is fostered through a well-rounded education, including the arts. I don't think anyone on this committee is going to be surprised to hear me mention the STEAM caucus, which is I'm co-chairing with Representative Stefanik from New York, working on integrating arts and design into STEM learning to educate innovators. We have out in Oregon this wonderful organization called Northwest Noggin, which is a collaboration of our medical school, Oregon Health Sciences University, Portland State University, Pacific Northwest College of Art, and the Regional Arts and Culture Council. And they go around exciting the public about ongoing taxpayer-supported neuroscience research. And they're doing great work in expanding the number of people who are interested in science and also communicating with all generations and all people about the benefits of science. So, Dr. Rollett, in your testimony, you talked about the role of data analytics across the manufacturing sector. And you noted that it's not necessarily going to be important for all data analytic workers to have a computer science degree. So what skills are most important for addressing the opportunities? You did say in your testimony that technology forces us to think differently about how to make things. So talk about the Next Manufacturing Center at Carnegie Mellon and what you're doing to prepare students for evolving fields. And we know as technology changes, we need intellectual flexibility as well. So how do you educate people for that kind of work?
So thank you for the opportunity to address that. The way that we're approaching that is telling our students, don't be afraid of these new techniques. Jump in, try them, and lo and behold, almost every time they're trying it, sometimes it's a struggle, but almost every time that they try it, they're discovering, oh, this actually works. Even if it's not big data in quite the sense that, say, Kathy would tell us, even small data works. So, for example, in these powder bed machines, you spread a layer. Well, if you just take a picture of that layer and then another picture, and you keep analyzing it, and you use these computer vision techniques, which are a sort of subset of machine learning, lo and behold, you can figure out whether your part is building properly or not. That's the kind of thing that we've got to transmit to all of our students, to say, it's not that bad, jump in and try it, and little by little, you'll get there.
I think over the years, many students have been very risk averse, and they don't want to risk taking something where they might not get the best grade possible. So we have to work on overcoming that, because there's so much potential out there until students have the opportunity to get in and have some of that hands-on learning. Dr. Yelick, I'm in the Northwest, and it's not a question of if, but when we have an earthquake off the Northwest coast. And a tsunami could be triggered, of course, by that earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone. So in your testimony, you discussed the research at Berkeley Lab to simulate a large magnitude earthquake. And I would listen very carefully because you were talking about the effects on an identical building in different areas. This data could be really crucial as we are assessing the need for more resilient infrastructure, not only in Oregon, but across the country. So what technical challenges are you facing in sort of curating, sharing, and labeling and searching that data, and what support can the federal government provide to accelerate a resolution of these issues?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Yes, this is very exciting work that's going on in simulating earthquakes. It's currently at a regional scale, and there are technology challenges to trying to even get that to larger scale simulations. But I think even more importantly, the work that I talked about is trying to use information about the geology to try to give you much more precise information about the safety of a particular location. And the challenge would be is to try to collect this data and then to actually invert it, that is, turn it into a model. So you collect the data, and then in some sense you're trying to develop a set of equations that say how that area, based on the data that's been collected from little tiny seismic events, it'll tell you something about how that particular subregion, even a yard or a block, city block or something like that, how that city block is going to behave in an earthquake. And you can use the information from tiny seismic events and then to infer how it will behave in a significant earthquake. And so there's technical challenge, mathematical challenges of doing that, as well as the scale of computing for both doing the data, inverting the data, but also then doing the simulation. And I think you bring up a very good point about the community needs for these community data sets, because you really want to make it possible for many groups of people, not just, for example, a power company that has smart meter data, but for other people to access that kind of data.
Thank you, and I want to follow up with that. I'm running out of time, but as we talk about infrastructure and investment in infrastructure, we know that by making better decisions at the outset, we can save lives and save properties. So the more information we have about where we're building and how we're building is going to be a benefit to people across this country as well as in Northwest Oregon. So thank you again to this distinguished panel. I yield back.
Thank you, ma'am. The gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. Comstock, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank all of you here. This has been very interesting once again. Now, what are, and I guess I'll ask to all of you, what are the unexamined big data challenges that could benefit from machine learning? And what are the consequences for the U.S. for not being the world leader in that if we aren't going forward in the future? Maybe Dr. Rollett, if you'd like to start. You looked like you had an answer ready to go. So.
I'll give you a small example from my own field. So when we deal with materials, then we have to look inside the materials. So we typically take a piece of steel and we cut it and we polish it and we take pictures of it. So traditionally, what we've done is play the expert witness, as it were. You look at these pictures, which I often say resemble more a Jackson Pollock painting than anything that remotely as simple as a cat. And so the excitement in our field is that we now have the tools that we can start to tease things out of these pictures, that we go from something where we were completely dependent on sort of gray-bearded experts to let the computer do a lot of the job for you. And that speeds things up, and it automates them, and it allows companies to detect problems that they're running across. So it's just one example.
Excellent.
Congresswoman Comstock, thank you for the question. I have two sort of answers, specifically to thinking about brains and then to thinking about education. I think these are the potential things that we can lose. One of the things that I find fascinating about how our brains work is that whether you are Einstein thinking up a relativity or Mozart making a concerto, or you're just at home watching reality TV, all brains operate at about 20 watts of energy. These light bulbs in this room are probably at 60 watts of energy. And although you might already think some of your colleagues are dim bulbs, in this sense, in this sense, what's amazing about the things that they can accomplish is that they accomplish them at energy efficiencies that are currently unheard of for any type of algorithm. So I feel like if we can leverage machine learning, deep analytics, and understand how the brain passes information and processes information for energies that are really unheard of in our energy efficiencies unheard of in our current algorithms and robots, that's a huge benefit to both the national and economic securities of our country. That's the first. And the second thing I'd like to add, the other reason that it's important for us to lead now, and I'll do it by example, is that in 1962 at Rice University, John F. Kennedy announced that we were going to the moon. And he announced it, and in his speech, he said, we're going to go to the moon, and I paraphrase, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, and because hard things test our mettle and test our capabilities. The other interesting fact about that is in 1969, when we landed on the moon, the average age of a NASA scientist was 29 years old. So quick math suggests that when Kennedy announced the moonshot, many of these people were in college. They were students. And there was something inspirational about positing something difficult, positing something visionary. And I suspect that this has benefited us. Recruiting this generation of scientists to the moonshot has benefited this country in ways that we yet haven't calculated. And I suspect that if we don't move now, we lose both of these opportunities, among many others.
So it's really a matter of getting that focus and attention and commitment so that you have that next generation understanding this is really a long-term investment and we have a passion for it, so they will.
Exactly.
I'll just add briefly that I think we really want to, in terms of the threat associated with this, is really about continuing to be a leader in computing, but also about the control and use of information. And you can see how kinds of examples we've given are really important, and you hear about it in the news about the control and use of information. We need leaders in understanding how to do that and how to and make sure that information is used wisely. We teach our freshmen at Berkeley a course in data science. So whether they're going to go off and become English majors or art majors or engineers, we think it's really important for people to understand data.
And just real briefly, I'd like to build a little bit on Dr. Rollett's comments. For us, we're seeing tremendous benefit in big data for things like trying to better predict when an aircraft engine part has to be repaired, when it needs to be inspected. Very critical for the safety of that engine. For gas turbines, same thing, when parts need to be inspected, repaired. So where does big data come in? It comes in with computational fluid dynamics, which we leverage actually the high-performance computing infrastructure of the U.S. Material science, material knowledge, trying to understand grain structure, et cetera. So for us, that nexus of the digital technologies with the physics understanding the thermodynamics of our assets are leading us into what I think is just a better place to be from maintenance scheduling, safety, resiliency, et cetera.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of your answers. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Byers, recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you all very much for doing this. Dr. Kasthuri, so on the BRAIN initiative, I think obviously maybe the most exciting thing happening in the world today. I was fascinated by this whole notion of the connectome. 1 billion neurons with 1 quadrillion connections. You talk about it being, if you took all the written material in the world into one data set, it'd just be a small fraction of the size of this brain map. Is it possible that it's simpler than that? That it sort of strains my understanding that there are few things in nature that are as complex as that. Why in evolution did we develop something that in every human being on the planet has a brain that's already contains more connections than every bit of written material?
Congressman Byer, that's a great question. And like most scientists, I'm going to do a little bit of hand waving and a little bit of conjecture because the question that you're asking is the question that we are trying to accomplish. We know reasonably well that there are, as you said, 100 billion brain cells, neurons, that make on order 1 quadrillion connections in a brain. Now, when I say the data of that, I'm really talking about the raw image data. What would it take to take a picture of every part of the brain, and if you added up all the data of all those pictures together, it would be the largest data set ever collected. Now, I suspect we have to do that at least once, and then it might be possible that there are patterns within that data that then simplify the next time that we have to image a brain. One way to think about this is that before we understood at a map of DNA, we didn't realize that there was a pattern within DNA, meaning every 3 nucleotides, A, C, T, et cetera, codes for a protein. And that essentially simplifies the data structure to, let's say, 1/3. I don't need to know. I just need to know that these 3 things are an internal pattern that then gets repeated again and again and again. And that was a fundamental insight. We have no similar insight into the brain. Is there a repetitive pattern that would actually reduce the amount of data that we had to collect? So you're right. It might be that the second brain or the third brain isn't going to be that much data. But now let me give you the counter, because as a scientist, I have to do both sides or all sides. The other thing we know is that each human brain is unique, very much like a snowflake. Your brain, the connectivity, the connections in your brain, at some level have to represent your life history, what your brain has experienced. And so the question for me, and I think it's really one of the most important questions, is even within a snowflake, there are things that are unique to snowflakes, but they're the same. They either have 7 arms or 8 arms or 6 arms. I get them confused with spiders, but it's one of those is the answer. So there is regularity in a snowflake at the level of the arms, but there is uniqueness at the level of the things that jut out of the 7 arms of the snowflake. And the fundamental question is, what is unique? What is the part that makes each of us a neurological snowflake, and what is common between all of us? And that would be one of the very first goals of doing a map, is to discover the answer to your question.
Yeah, well, thank you for a very thoughtful answer. And I keep coming back to the Einstein notion that always looking for the simplest answers, things that unify it all together. So here's another simple question. You talked in your very first paragraph about reverse engineering human cognition into our computers. Good idea? At our most recent AI hearing here, a lot of the controversy was dealing with Elon Musk and others and their concerns about what happens when consciousness emerges in machines.
Again, a fantastic question. Here's my version of an answer. We deal with smarter things every day. Many of our children, especially mine, wind up getting consciousness and being smarter than us, certainly smarter than me. But yet, we don't worry about the fact that this next generation of children, forever the next generation of children, will always be smarter than us, because we've developed ways as a society to instill in them the value systems that we have. And there are multiple avenues for how we can instill in our children the value systems that we have. I suspect we might use the same things when we make smart algorithms, the same way we make smart children. We won't just produce smart algorithms, but we'll instill in them the values that we have, the same way that we instill our values in our children. Now, that didn't answer your question of whether reverse engineering the brain is a specific good idea for AI or not. The only thing I would say is that no matter what we can imagine AI, artificial intelligence, doing, there is a biological system that does that at more energy efficiency and at speed, for which that AI physical silicon system does not. But I suspect these answers are probably best debated amongst you, and then you can tell us.
But that was a very optimistic thing. I want to say one of the things we do is we keep the car keys. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of Kansas, I'm sure you all remember President Eisenhower is the one who started NASA in 1958. But it was President Kennedy, as several of you have stated, that gave us a definitive goal to get to the moon. And as a young boy, I saw that before my eyes, the whole country wrapped around that. Each of you get 1 minute. What's your big, hairy, audacious goal, your idea? It took 11 years, 58 to 69, to get to the moon. Where are we going to be in 11 years? Dr. Rollett, we'll start with you, and you each get 1 minute.
I think we're going to see that manufacturing is a much more clever operation. It understands the materials. It understands how things are going to last, and it draws on a much wider set of disciplines than it currently does. I have to admit, I don't exactly have an analogy to going to the moon, but that's a very good challenge.
What I like about your idea is that's going to add to the GDP. Our GDP grows when we become more efficient, not when federal government sends dollars to states for social projects. So I love adding to GDP. Dr. Nielsen, I guess you're next.
So I would love it if every one of our assets, and I mentioned there are about 300,000 globally, had their own digital twin. So every aircraft engine had its own digital twin. A digital twin is a computer model that when the asset is operating, we're collecting data. So imagine an aircraft engine taking off. As soon as that aircraft engine takes off, we pull the data back from the aircraft engine, we update the computer model. That computer model becomes a digital twin of the physical asset. If every one of our 300,000 plus assets had a digital twin, we'd be able to know with very good precision when it need to be maintained, when it need to be pulled off wing, what kind of repairs, when it went to a repair shop, what kind of repairs need to occur.
You can do that with satellites and a whole bunch of things.
We can pull back data from a whole variety of different pathways, it's then utilizing that data in the most efficient way, which we use machine learning and AI type techniques.
Maybe get rural internet to rural places by doing that, right?
Yep.
Okay, we better go on. Dr. Yelick.
So I think one of the biggest challenges is understanding the microbiome and being able to use that information about the microbiome in both health applications, in agriculture, in engineering, materials, and other areas. So I think that we already know that your microbiome, your own personal gut microbiome, is associated with things like obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and many other disorders. We don't understand it as well in agriculture, but we're looking at things like taking images of fields, putting biosensors into the fields, and putting all this information together to understand how to improve the microbiome, to improve crop yield, and reduce other problems. So I think it's about both understanding and controlling the microbiome, which is a huge computational problem.
Okay, Dr. Kasthuri.
The thing I would really like to have done in 11 years is understand how brains learn. And it actually reminds me of something that I should have said earlier about the differences between artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and how brains learn. The main difference is that for many of these algorithms, you have to provide them thousands of examples, millions of examples, billions of examples, before they can then produce inferences or predictions that are based on those examples. For those of you with children, you know that that's not the way children learn. They can learn in one example. They can learn in half an example. Sometimes I don't even know where they're learning these things. And when they learn something, they learn not only the very specific details of that thing, they can immediately abstract it to a bunch of other examples. For me, this happened with my son the first time he learned to recognize what a tiger was. An image of a tiger he could see, and then as soon as he learned that, he could see a cartoon of a tiger. He could see a tiger upside down. He could see the back of a tiger or the side of a tiger, and from that first example, be able to learn all of these other general applications. If in 11 years we could understand how the brain does that, and then reverse engineer that into our algorithms and our computers and robots, I suspect that will influence our GDP in ways that we hadn't yet imagined.
Okay, thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman from the great state of Texas recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Rollett, am I pronouncing it right? Okay. In your testimony, you talk about the huge amounts of data that are generated by experiments using light sources to examine the processes involved in additive manufacturing. You also highlight the need for more advanced computing algorithms to help researchers extract information from this data. And you state that we are essentially building the infrastructure for digital engineering and manufacturing. I was hoping that you'd be able to expand on that a little bit and tell us also what are the necessary components of such infrastructure.
Right. So one of the things that I didn't have time to talk about is where does the data go? And so, one's generating terabytes. The standard story is you go to a light source, you do an experiment, all of that data has to go on disk drives, and then you literally carry the disk drives back home. So despite the substantial investments in the internet and the data pipe, so to speak, from the perspective of an experimenter, it's still somewhat clumsy. So even that infrastructure could do with some attention. It's also the case that the algorithms that exist have been developed for a fairly specialized set of applications. So, the deep learning methods, they exist. And what we're doing at the moment is basically borrowing them and applying them everywhere that we can. But in other words, we haven't gone very far with developing the specialized techniques or the specialized applications. So even that little movie that I showed, to be honest, I mean, the furthest that we've got is doing very basic analysis so far. And we actually need cleverer, more sophisticated algorithms to analyze all of that information that's latent in those images. I know that sounds like I'm not doing my job, but I mean, I'm just trying to get some idea across of the challenges of taking techniques that have been worked out and then taking them to a completely different domain and doing something worthwhile.
I was also hoping that you'd be able to describe the progress your group has made in teaching computers to recognize different kinds of metal powders used in additive manufacturing. I think that you go on to state that these successes have the potential to impact improvements to materials as well as the generation of new materials. And I was hoping that you could talk about that a little bit more, and for the ability of a computer to recognize different types of metal and improvements to materials and how that can impact the development of new materials.
So thank you for the question. I was trying to think of a powder. I mean, think of talcum powder or something like that. I mean, you spread some on a piece of paper and you look at it and you think, well, that powder looks much like any other powder. It looks like something you would use in the garden or whatever. So the point I'm trying to get across is that when you take these pictures of these materials, one material looks much like another. However, when you take pictures with enough resolution and you allow these machine learning algorithms to work on them, then what you discover is they can see differences that no human can see. So it turns out that you can use the computer to distinguish powders from different sources, different materials, so on and so forth. And that's pretty magic. That means that you can, if you're a company and you're using these powders, you can detect whether you've got, if somebody's giving you what's supposed to be the same powder, you can analyze it and say, no, it's not the same powder after all. So there's considerable power in that. Another example is things break, they fracture. And you might be surprised, but there's quite a substantial business in analyzing failures. Bicycles break and somebody has to absorb the liability. Bridges crack, somebody has to deal with that. Well, that's another case where the people involved look at pictures of these fracture surfaces and they make expert judgments. So one of the things that we're discovering is that we can actually, again, use some of the computer vision techniques to figure out this fracture is a different kind of fracture, or this is a different fatigue failure that's occurred. Again, it's magic. It opens up, not eliminating the expert, not at all. The analogy is with radiography on cancers. It's helping the experts to do a better job, to do a faster job, to be able to help the people that they're working for.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, sir. The gentlelady from Arizona is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say this committee is really interesting. I learn about all types of things and people studying the brains. I think we're going to hear about flying cars sometime soon, which is exciting. I'm from Arizona, and the issues that are really big in my district, which are the suburbs of Phoenix mostly, are actually national security and border security. And we have two border ports of entry connecting Mexico and Arizona. And I have the Luke Air Force Base in my congressional district. And so I was wondering if you had any ideas how machine learning, artificial intelligence are being used in border security and national security. If you have any thoughts.
Well, I can say, generally speaking, that in national security, like in science, you're often looking for some signal, some pattern in very noisy data. So whether you're looking at telephones or you're looking at some other kind of collected information, you are looking for patterns, and machine learning is certainly used in that. I think probably, I'm not aware in border security of current applications of machine learning. I would think that things like face recognition software would probably be useful there, and I just don't know of the current applications.
So I know some of the colleagues at our research center are exploring things like security, using facial recognition, but trying to take it a step further. So using principles of machine learning, et cetera, trying to detect the intent of a person. So they'll use computer vision, they'll watch a group of individuals, but try to make inferences about the intent of what that group is doing. Is there something going to happen? Who's in charge of this group? What are they trying to do? So, and they're working with the Department of Defense on many of these applications. And I think there's going to be tremendous breakthroughs where artificial intelligence and machine learning are going to help us understand, not only recognize people, but also trying now to recognize the intent of what that person is trying to do.
And you mentioned an Air Force base. So something that maybe not everybody is aware of is that the military operates very old vehicles, and they have to repair and replace a lot. And that means that manufacturing is not just a matter of delivering a new aircraft. It's also a matter of how you keep old aircraft going. I mean, think of the B-52s and how old they are. And so there are very important defense applications for machine learning, for manufacturing, and manufacturing in the repair and replace sense. And again, when you're running old vehicles, you're very concerned about outliers, which hasn't come up very much so far today. But taking data and recognizing where you've got a case that's just not in the cloud, it's not in with everybody else, and figuring out what that means and how you're going to deal with it.
Anyone else? One
I-
person left.
Of course, yes, it's me. So, of course, my work doesn't deal directly with either border security or national security, but just to echo one other sentiment, one of the things I'm interested in is that as our cameras get faster, as instead of taking 30 shots per second, we can now take 60 shots per second, 90 shots per second, 120 frames per second usually, and you start watching people's facial features as they're just engaging in normal life. It turns out that we produce a lot of microfacial features that happen so fast and so quick that they often aren't detected consciously by each other, but convey a tremendous amount of information about things like intent and et cetera. I suspect that as our technology, as our cameras get better, and of course, if you take 120 pictures in a second versus 30 pictures in a second, that's already 4 times more data that you're collecting per second. If we can deal with the data and get better cameras, we will actually be making inferences about intentions sooner rather than later.
Very interesting. I'm glad that you all work in these different fields, and I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Foster, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses. And let's say, I guess I'll start with some hometown cheerleading for Argonne National Lab, which, I find it quite remarkable. Argonne Lab has been, they've come out to events that we've had in my district dealing with the opioid crisis, and I find it incredible that at one single laboratory, we have everything from using the advanced photon source and its upgrades to directly image what are called G-coupled protein receptors at the very heart of the chemical interaction with the brain, all the way up through modeling the high-level function of the brain, the connectome, and everything in between. And it's really one of the magic things that happen at Argonne and at all of the, particularly the multi-purpose laboratories, which are really gems of our country. Now, one thing I'd like to talk about, and relates to big data and superconducting, is that you have to make a bunch of technological bets in a situation where the technology is changing really, really rapidly. For example, you have the choice of, for the data pipes, you can do conventional, very wide floating point things for partial differential equations and equations of state, things like that, the way supercomputing has been done for years, and yet there's a lot of movement for artificial intelligence toward much narrower data paths, 8 bits or even less, or 1 bit if you're talking about simulating the brain firing or not. You have questions on the storage where you can have, classically, we have huge external data sets, like the full geometry of the brain that you will then use supercomputing to extract the connectome. Now we're seeing more and more internally generated data sets, like these are games playing each other, where you just generate the data, throw it away, you don't care about storage at all. Or simulation of billions of miles of driving, where that data never has to be stored at all. And so that really affects the high-level design of these machines. In Congress, we have to commit to projects, on a sort of 5-year time cycle, when every 6 months there are new disruptive things. We have to decide, are these largely going to be front ends to quantum computing or not? all right? And so how do you deal with that sort of, internally in your planning? And should we move more toward the commercial model of move fast, take risks, and break things? Or are our projects that we have to approve in Congress things that have to have no chance of failing? And do you think Congress is too far on one side or the other of that trade-off?
I guess as a computer scientist, maybe I'll start here, and I would say that you've asked a very good question. I think this issue of risk in technology is very important, and we do need to take lots of risks and try a lot of things, especially right now, as not only are processors not getting in faster because of the end of Dennard scaling, but we're facing the end of Moore's law, which is the end of transistors getting denser on a chip. We really need to try a number of different things, including quantum, neuromorphic computing, and others. The issue of even the design of computers, if we look at the exascale computing program, with very important, of course, the first machine targeted for Argonne National Labs in 2021. And the process that is really fundamental to the exascale project is this idea of co-design that is bringing together people who understand the applications, like Tony, and with the people that understand the applied mathematics, with people that understand the computer architecture design. And it is the exascale program is looking at both applying machine learning algorithms for things like the cancer initiative, as well as the microbiome, where you also have these very tiny data types, only 4 characters that you can store in maybe 2 bits, and putting all of that together. So those machines are being co-designed to try to understand all those different applications and work well on the traditional high-performance simulation applications, as well as some of these new data analysis problems. To answer your question directly, I think that, if anything, that project is very focused on that goal of 2021, and some other machines will come after that in 22 and 23, and the application. So it's not just about delivering the machines, it's about delivering 25 applications that are all being developed at the same time to run on those machines. It is a very exciting project. I actually lead the microbiome project in exascale, and I think it's a great amount of fun, but it is a project that doesn't have much room for risk or basic research. And so I do think it's very important to rebuild the fundamental research program, for example, in the Department of Energy, to make sure that 10 years from now, we could have some other kind of future program that we would have the people that are trained in order to answer those basic questions and figure out how to build another computing device of some kind.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very comprehensive answer. But if you could just, in my last 1 second here, just sort of, do you think Congress is being too risk averse in our expectations, or should we be more risk tolerant that allow you occasionally to fail because you made a technological bet that has not come through?
I think I'll answer that from the science perspective. As a scientist, I absolutely want to be able to take risks, and I want to be able to fail. I think the congressional question I will leave to you to debate.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman from California, Mr. Rohrbacher, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to get down to some basics here. This is for the whole panel. Who's going to be put out of work because of the changes that you see coming as we do what's necessary to fully understand what you're doing scientifically? Who's going to be put out of work?
I hope very much that nobody's going to be put out of work.
Oh, you got to be kidding. I mean, whenever there's change for the better, otherwise we'd have people working and buggy whips would still be.
Yeah. I think the point here is to sustain American industry at its most sophisticated and competitive level.
What professions are going to be losing jobs? Everybody's afraid to say that? Come on,
I would say they've mostly been lost. I mean, if you look at steel mills, we have steel mills.
Okay.
They used to run with 30,000 people.
Right.
That's why the population of Pittsburgh was so large years ago, right?
Right.
It's decreased enormously.
Okay, well, so where can we expect that in the future from this new technology or this new understanding of technology? Anybody want to tell me?
I have a very
Don't be afraid now.
I have a very quick answer. A lot of historically, a lot of science is done on getting relatively cheap labor to produce data and to analyze data. By that, I mean graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, young assistant professors, et cetera. I
So
suspect
they're not going to be needed, probably.
well, I suspect that they should still be trained, but then perhaps that they won't be used specifically in just laboriously collecting data and analyzing
Okay,
data.
so let's go through that. Where are the new jobs going to be created? What new jobs will be created by the advances that you're advocating and want us to focus some resources on?
I'm hoping that when the people who are trained in science no longer have to do all of that work, they then expand into other fields that could use scientific education, like the legal system or Congress.
But what specifically can we look at, say, that will remind Congressmen always to turn off the ringer, even when it's their wife? Now I'm in big trouble. Okay. Tell me, so what jobs are going to be created? What can we expect from what your research is in the future? Do you have a specific job that you can say, we're going to be able to do this, and thus people will have a job doing it?
Well, I think there will be a lot more jobs in big data and data analysis and things like that, and more interesting jobs, I think, going along with what was already said, that it's really about replacing. So if we replace taxi drivers with self-driving cars, that eliminates a certain class of jobs.
Okay, well, there you go.
Right, but it allows people to then spend their time doing something more interesting, such as perhaps analyzing the future of the transportation system and things like that.
Well, but taxi cab driver finally got somebody to admit somebody is going to be hurt and they have to change their life. Let me just note that happens with every bit of progress. Some people are left out. They have to form new type of lifestyles. And we need to understand that. Maybe we need to prepare for it as we move forward. What diseases do you think that, especially when we're talking about controlling things that are going on in the human mind, what diseases do you think that we can bring under control that are out of control now? Diabetes very obviously has something to do with the brain is telling the body what to do. Different, maybe even cancer. What diseases do you think that we can have a chance of curing with this?
I think there's a range of neurological diseases that obviously we'll be able to do a better job curing or ameliorating once we understand the brain. These range from neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's to more mental illnesses, psychiatric illnesses, and to even early developmental diseases like autism. I think all of these will absolutely be benefited by a better.
And if we can control the way the brain is functioning, there are maladies that you are suffering, like I say, diabetes and et cetera, that maybe we can tell the brain not to do that. And once we have that deeper understanding. One last question, I got just a couple seconds. I remember 2001, HAL got out of control and tried to kill these people. And Elon Musk is warning us. I understand somebody's already brought that up. But what, if we do end up with very independent-minded robots, which is what I think we're talking about here, why shouldn't we think of that as a potential danger as well as a potential asset? Elon Musk is right in that.
Well, I was going to throw in that I think one opportunity would be in healthcare and for example, the use of robots as assistants. So not replacing people, but having robots help them. Well, those robots have to be programmed, they have to be built. I mean, there's a huge infrastructure that we don't have. So
yeah, but if we're building robots that can think independently, who knows? They're helping us in the hospitals or wherever it is. What if HAL gets out of control?
So I think AI has been discussed mostly in the context of how do you do something? How do you make something work? When it comes to what these machines actually do, you also need supervision. And what I think we have to do is to build in AI that addresses control and evaluation, the equivalent of the little guy on your shoulder saying, don't do that, you're going to get into trouble. So you need something like that, which I haven't heard people talk about much.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
You've been watching too many Schwarzenegger films.
It's true.
The gentleman yields back, and Mr. McNerney, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and I apologize to the panel for having to step in and out in the hearing so far. Mr. Nielsen, I'm a former wind engineer. I spent about 20 years in the business, and I understand that the digital twin technology has allowed GE to produce increase production by about 20%. Is that right?
About 5% on an average wind turbine, yes.
5%.
5%, which is pretty amazing when you think we're not switching any of the hardware. It's just making that control system on a wind turbine much smarter using a digital.
5% is believable.
5%.
20% for the wind farm?
Yeah, it's 5%
Okay.
for.
Okay, I can believe that. As chair of the Grid Innovation Caucus, I'm particularly interested in using new technology to create a smarter grid. We have things like the duck curve and that are affecting the grid. How can all this technology improve grid stability and reliability and efficiency and so on?
Yeah, so we're now embarking on research for understanding how to better integrate disparate power sources together in a region and regional. So imagine us trying to use AI machine learning to say, okay, I have a single combined cycle power plant. How do I better optimize the efficiency of it? Produce less emissions, use less fuel, allow more profit from it. But we're taking that now a step further and saying, how do I then look regionally and integrate in not only that combined cycle power plant, but the solar farm, the wind farm, et cetera? How do I balance that and optimize at a grid scale level versus just a micro scale level? So that's some of the research that's ongoing now. We're continuing to work on it. But that's our plan, is to better figure out that macro scale optimization problem.
So, I mean, once you get that figured out, then you need to have some sort of a SCADA or control system that can dispatch and...
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that's another product for GE or for the other...
Yes, correct.
Okay.
We're figuring out how to not only build those optimization routines, but how to then put them in what we call edge devices, the SCADA systems, the unit control systems, et cetera. So it's not only trying to figure out the algorithm, but making sure that algorithm can execute in a time scale that can be put into some of these, as you mentioned, SCADA systems and control systems.
Okay, well, with the digital ghost, a power plant can replicate an industrial system and the component parts for cyber vulnerability. Is that right?
So we use digital ghost at what we call the cyber physical layer. So imagine having a digital twin of a gas turbine. So that digital twin tells us how that gas turbine is behaving and should behave. We then compare to what signals being generated, what sensors are being signals and generated, and we compare that behavior and say that behavior doesn't look right. Our digital twin says something's not correct. The thermodynamics aren't correct.
Well, I mean, I can see that from mechanical systems. What about cyber?
So what we're doing is we're looking at, we're not applying it at sort of the network layer. We're not watching network traffic. We're actually looking at the machine level and understanding if the machine is behaving as it should be, given the inputs, the control signals, as well as the outputs, the sensors, et cetera. Some recent attacks look at replicating sensors.
So the same sort of behavior characteristics are going to be monitored, can tell you whether or not there's a cyber issue or some other sort of mechanical failure impending.
Perfect. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly detection scheme. Yes.
Dr. Yelick, thank you for coming, and I've visited your lab a number of times. It's always a pleasure to do so. I think you guys are doing some really good work out there. One of the things that was striking was the work that you did on exascale computing, simulating the San Francisco. The collective have we collectively used this information to harden our systems, to harden our communities against an earthquake, or is that something that's yet to happen?
That's something that's yet to happen. We're just starting to see some of this very detailed information coming from the simulations, and as I mentioned earlier, even bringing in more detailed data into the simulations to give you better geological information about the stability of a certain region or even a certain local area, a city block or whatever, and that and using that information is not something that is happening yet, but obviously should be.
This is sort of a rhetorical question, but somebody can answer it if you feel like it. I know we hear about the social challenges of digital technology and AI and big data, in terms of job displacement. Does AI tell us anything about that, about how we should respond to this crisis?
I don't know of any studies that have used AI to do that. People do use AI to understand the market economics and things like that, and I'm sure that people are using large-scale data analytics of various kinds, and they certainly are, to understand changes in jobs and what will happen with them. It is, by the way, a very active area of discussion within the computer science community about both the ethics, which you heard about, I think, at a previous hearing of AI, but also the issues of job replacing and jobs.
Sure, Dr. Rollett.
If I might jump in, I would encourage you to think about supporting research in policy and even social science to address that issue, because AI displacing people is about education, it's about retraining, it's about how people behave. So we scientists are really sort of the front end of this, but there's a lot of implications that are much broader than what we've talked about this morning.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, sir. The gentleman from Florida, Dr. Nils.
Thank you very much, Chairman Weber. And I want to say add my thank you to the panel and underscore my personal belief in how important all your work is. I've visited Dr. Bobby Kasthuri's lab, great fan of your work and your energy level. Dr. Yelick will be visiting you in the near future, so that'll be fun too. I want to focus on the niche in big computing, which is artificial intelligence, and I apologize I missed that hearing earlier. But it was near and dear to my heart. I think we all see many potential benefits of artificial intelligence, but there are some potential problems, and I think it serves us to face those as we're having this virtual love fest for artificial intelligence. And we've known this since at least the 60s. I mean, the Isaac Asimov robotic novels and the robotic laws, the 3 laws of robotics, which I have in my printout, the copies of, in case anybody doesn't remember them. I bet this group does. But what I would do is I also, by the way, was looking for guides for artificial intelligence, and I came up with the 12 Boy Scout laws too, so I don't know how that responds. So I want to offer some quotes and then get some thoughts from you. And these are quotes from people who are recognizably smart people. Stephen Hawking said, "I think the development of artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race." Elon Musk, quoted several times here, said, "I think we should be very careful about artificial intelligence. If I were to guess what our biggest existential threat is, it's probably that." Bill Gates responded, "I agree with Elon Musk, and I don't understand why people aren't concerned." And then finally, Jane Talon, one of the inventors of Skype, said, "With strong artificial intelligence, planning ahead is a better strategy than learning from mistakes," and went on to say, "It really sucks to be the #2 intelligent species on the planet." Just ask the gorillas. So in everybody's handout, you have a series, a very brief summary of a series of experiments run at MIT on artificial intelligence. The first one was named Norman, which was an artificial intelligence educated on biased data, not false data, but biased data, and turned into a deeply sociopathic intelligence. And there was another one, Tay, which was really just an artificial intelligence Twitter bot, which they turned loose into the internet. And Tay was, I think it wasn't the intention of the MIT researchers, but people engaged with Tay and tried to provoke it to say racist and inappropriate things, which it did. And there's some other experiments from MIT as well. So I want to note, like Dr. Kasthuri, I have sons that are more clever than I, but they are not virtual supermen, nor do they operate at the speed of light. So, you can still, there's ways of working with them. I'm not so sure about that with artificial intelligence. My question first, what are the implications of our future where black box machine learning, the process can't even be interpreted? Once you get several layers in, we can't even interpret it. What's the implications on that to you, Dr. Kasthuri, and Dr. Yelick second?
Congressman Dunn, thank you for the kind words to start. And I actually suspect there is a reasonable concern that the things that we develop in artificial intelligence are different than the other things, like our children, because their ability to change is at the level of the speed of computers as opposed to the speed of our own. So I agree that there's legitimate cause for concern. I suspect that we will have to come up with lessons and safeguards the same way that we've done with every existential crisis, the discovery of nuclear energy, the application to nuclear weapons. As humans, we do have some history of living on the edge and figuring out how to get the benefit of something and keep the risk at bay. You're right that if algorithms can change faster than we can think, our existing previous historical safeguards might not work. To the specific question that you asked about the non-interpretability, for me, without knowing what the algorithm is producing, how do you innovate if you don't know the fundamental nature of what the algorithm is, its principles for how it comes to a conclusion? I worry that we won't be able to innovate on those results. And this is, interestingly, perhaps as a thought exercise, what if a machine learning algorithm could tell me, could collect enough data to make a prediction about a brain, about your brain or someone else's brain, that was incredibly accurate? Would we at that moment care how that machine learning algorithm arrived at its conclusion, or would we at that moment take the results that the algorithm produces and just go on with it? In which case there could be a missed opportunity for learning something deeply fundamental and principled about the brain.
And very quickly, Dr. Yelick.
Well, I agree with that. I think that these deep learning algorithms, which have these multiple layers, which is why they're deep, they have millions perhaps of parameters inside of them. And we don't really understand when you get an answer out why all these parameters put together tell you that that's a cat and this one's not a cat. And so that may be okay if we're trying to figure out where to place ads, as long as we give it unbiased data about where to place the ads so the right people.
But it might be more problem if it was flying a drone swarm on attack someplace.
Well, where it's a problem is if I'm a scientist, I want to understand why. It's not enough to say there's a correlation between these two things. And if the drone is flying in the right place, that's really probably the most important thing about some kind of a controlled vehicle. But in science,
We're dangerously close to being way, way, way over time, so I better yield back here, Mr. Thank you very much, though. I appreciate the chance.
All right, the gentlelady from Nevada, Ms. Rose, is recognized.
Thank you. I want to thank you for one of the most interesting, informative, and I want to say this is on the bleeding edge of everything that we need to worry about, for sure. But one thing we haven't talked about is data storage, and data storage specifically as critical infrastructure in this country, right? Because we have tons and tons of data everywhere, and where it goes and how we keep it is going to be of utmost importance. And so I know that we're trying to focus on that in the future, and in my district in Nevada, we have a major data storage company. It has state-of-the-art reliability. We have lots of quality standards to ensure its data is secure, but like I said, we don't consider it critical infrastructure. So right now, in this era of unprecedented data breaches, data hacks, every moment they're just pounding on us. In your view, what are the data storage centers that house the government and private sector? Where are their vulnerabilities, and what are the implications, and how should we be sure that we classify them as critical infrastructure?
So clearly those data centers are storing very important information that should be protected. And as you said, and even at the computing centers that we run in the labs, there's a constant barrage of attacks. Although we store at NERSC, the center at Berkeley Lab, only scientific data, so it is not really critical data. I think that using these kinds of machine learning techniques to look for patterns is one of the best mechanisms we have to prevent against attack, and they do have to learn from these patterns in order to figure out what is abnormal behavior. And we're looking at, as we build out the next network, even kind of embedding that information into the network so that you can see patterns of attack even before they get to a particular data center or a particular computer system.
Thank you. I have one other question, and you were talking about using predictive analytics with a digital twin to talk about fatigue in planes, but how can we use that to discuss infrastructure fatigue as we talk about the infrastructure failures around this country in bridges, roads, ports, et cetera, et cetera? So
that's, I think, a question of recognizing the need and talking to the agencies and finding out whether you consider that there are adequate programs to do that. I'm going to guess that there is not a huge amount of activity, but I don't know. So that's why I'm being very cautious in my answer. But I suspect it's one of the opportunity areas. It's an area where there is data. It's often rather incomplete, but it would definitely benefit from having the techniques applied, the machine learning techniques, to try to find the patterns, to try to identify outliers, and particularly trends that are not good.
thank you.
I would
Go ahead,
just-
please,
oh,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I would just second the comments made. I mean, at GE, we obviously focus a lot of our attention on the commercial assets that we build, but there's no reason the technologies, the ideas that are being applied there could be applied to bridges and infrastructure and all that. It's just, I think, a matter of will and policy to do that, right?
So do you think that would be well worth our time here in this committee to promote those kinds of policies or and research for you all or someone to do use of predictive analytics? Elizabeth, Congresswoman Esty and I sit on some infrastructure committees, and really important that we try to find out points of failure before they fail, right?
Absolutely, and I would encourage you to bring state and local government into that discussion, because they often own a lot of those assets.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you so much, and this is tremendously important for this committee and for the U.S. Congress to be dealing with, and we really appreciate you taking the time with us today. All of you have mentioned somewhat in passing this critical importance of how are the algorithms structured and how are we going to embed the values if we have AI moving much faster than our brains can function, or at least on multiple levels simultaneously. So we did have a hearing last month in talking about this, and one of the issues that came up that everyone supported, and I'd like your thoughts on that, is the critical importance of a diverse workforce in doing that. If you're going to try to train AI, it needs to represent the diversity of human experience, and therefore it can't be like my son who did computer science and astrophysics. If they all look like that, if those are the algorithms are all being developed by 26-year-olds like my son Thomas, we're not going to have the diversity of life experience. So first, if you can quickly, because I've got a couple of questions, thoughts on how do we ensure that? Because we're looking at that issue. We talk about that diverse workforce all the time, but when we're looking at AI and algorithms, it becomes vitally important that we do this. It's not about checking the box to say the Department of Labor that we've got a diverse workforce. This is actually vital to what we need to do.
So if I can just comment on that. Yesterday, before I left UC Berkeley, I gave a lecture to the freshman summer class, introductory computing class. My title was rather ostentatious, it's How to Save the World with Computing. What I find is that, that when you talk about the applications of computing and including data analytics and machine learning and real problems that are societal problems, you tend to bring in a much more diverse workforce. That class in particular has had over 50% women and a very good representation, at least relative to the norm of underrepresented minorities as well.
Anyone else who, I mean, MIT's found that when they changed the title of some of their computer science classes to, again, be applied in sort of more political and social realms, they had a dramatic change in terms of composition of classes.
Yeah, I would just quickly build upon that, too. I think, to me, when you look at AI and machine learning, you have to have a critical eye. You have to always be looking at it. And I think a diverse workforce and diverse experience can help just bring more perspectives to help critically question, why are those algorithms doing what they're doing? What is the outcomes? How can we improve that? So I would support that supposition, yes.
I'll just mention that the name of the course, which I was not teaching, by the way, I was giving a guest lecture, is The Beauty and Joy of Computing. So maybe that helps.
Well, that helps. And if I could have you turn again, and some of you have mentioned the important role of federal research. I mean, that's what this committee is looking at what is uniquely the federal role. As you see across the board, there's more and more effort meant and being engaged in. We see it in space research and other places to move into the private sector with the notion that the federal government's not very good at picking winners and losers. So if you can all talk about what you think are the most critical tasks for federal investment in, say, foundational and basic research that then will be developed by the GEs and others and companies not yet formed or conceived of. Because again, that's part of our job, is to figure out, I see it as our job to defend putting those basic research dollars in, because we don't know where they're going to go, but we do know they're vital to keep us, whether it's competitive or frankly just have better research and more care.
So perhaps I can go really quick. I suspect that there is a model of funding scientific research. That's this idea that if you plant 1 million seeds in the ground, a few flowers will grow, where individual labs and individual scientists have the freedom to judge what is the next important question to address. And I can see why having the federal government decide the next important question to address might not be the most efficient way to push science forward. But where I do see the federal government really playing a role is in the level of facilities and resources. That what I imagine is that the federal government establishes large-scale resources and facilities like the National Lab System, and then allow individual scientists to use to promote their individual ideas, but leveraging the federal resources. And I wonder if this is a compromise between allowing these seeds to grow, but the federal government, maybe this is appropriate, but maybe not, providing the fertilizer for those seeds.
They think we generate a lot of it, at least in this place.
So I would just add to I think the importance of fundamental research, as well as the facilities and infrastructure and the applied mathematics, the computer science, statistics, very important in machine learning. And as we said, these machine learning algorithms have been used a lot in non-scientific domains. There's a lot of interest in applying them in scientific domains. I think the peer review process in science will make machine learning better for everybody if we really put a lot of scrutiny on it.
And very quickly, I wanted to add that I think it's important that program managers in the federal government have some discretion over what they fund and take risks. And it's also important that the agencies have effective means of getting community input. And I don't want to name names, but some agencies have far more effective mechanisms for that than others.
Well, we might want to follow up with that last point, and one just to put out for you to help us with, and you mentioned it, Dr. Yelick, on peer review. The systematic, because of pressures to publish or perish and show success, is we are not sharing the failures, which are absolutely essential for science to make progress. It's one of the issues we've touched on a lot in this committee. We don't have any good answers, and it's gotten worse because of the pressures to get grant money and to show progress, but I am deeply concerned about those pressures, both in the private sector and the public sector, making it harder for us. People hoard the, quote, bad results, but they're absolutely essential for us to learn from them. And so I don't know how we change that dynamic, but I think that is something that we could really use your thoughts on that, because whether it's AI can maybe help us with disclosing the dead ends, and we learn from the dead ends and we move forward. But it is something that we have a big issue with in how we deal with the sharing of the not useful results, which may turn out to be very useful down the line.
I completely agree with that. I think the first step in that is sharing the scientific data and allowing people to reproduce the successful results, but also, as you said, examine the supposed failures to see. There are many examples of this in physics and other disciplines where people go back to data that may be 10 or 20 years old and find some new discovery in it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your indulgence to keep us here till the bitter end. Thank you. Not the bitter, not you, just the fact that the bell has rung, and we had a lot of questions for you. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
After failing 1,000 times for the light bulb, Dr. Edison, his staffer said, "Doesn't that frustrate you?" He goes, "What are you talking about? We're 1,000 ways closer to success." So I thank the witnesses for their testimony, the members for their questions. The record will remain open for 2 weeks for additional written comments and written questions from the members. This hearing is adjourned.